So to my critiques, I would like to say, should I have told this young man, sorry, it's just in your mind. It never happened because it's not scientifically accurate enough. No, I would say if you use this kind of system the right way, it can create magic. You have to do it the right way.
Hi, I'm Zack Newmark, and you're with Damn Yankee, the show that brings you all the best entertainers, performers, comedians, artists, and authors here in the Netherlands and those traveling through the country. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Thomas Erikson is a renowned behaviorist, keynote speaker, mentor, and author of the global best-selling series Surrounded By, with books such as Surrounded by Idiots and Surrounded by Energy Vampires. The most recent book in the series, Surrounded by Liars, was published in 2024. Thomas is Sweden's most translated living author, with his books having been translated into nearly 70 different languages. His series has sold over 10 million copies. Thomas, your series has sold over 10 million copies, but it's certainly not the only book that you've written, is it?
No, that's true. I actually began my writing career as a thriller author. And I published a couple of books, let's see, 2011, 2012, actually translated into Dutch, actually. That was many years ago. But that was where it started. I wrote for 20 years without getting published. So I'm obviously not a natural talent, let's say. Haha. Ouch, rather.
I don't know about that. I mean, Mike, what I'd be wondering is here, for 15 years or 10 to 15 years, you've been writing these books, which are categorized as self-help books, though I think they're a little bit more insightful than maybe, your run-of-the-mill self-help books. But I'm wondering if going through the process of writing these books, if it's kind of given you a drive to go back to fiction a little bit.
I Well, I have gone back to fiction last year, and actually, I think that book. I know it's actually also published in Dutch. It's called Miljardair or something like that. I don't know how you say it. The billionaire in
Billionaire.
English, and the billionaire, yes. And it's just that's a fun project. It's basically sort of a hobby thing. It's doing pretty okay, but it's because I love writing, I love fiction, I love storytelling and creating, new universes, and I don't have to sort of keep track of things. I can invent stuff. When I write my let's say instruction manuals, I have to speak the truth as much as possible, of course. So that's another kind of process, really. But fiction is fantastic.
So having come from, being a business consultant and then, but always having, a bit of an artistic drive behind it, was writing the self-help books or the Surrounded by series, was that kind of a natural jump for you?
I guess it was. I mean, as you said, I've been a management consultant for 25 years, and then I realized, well, 15 years by when I started writing the book, and I was thinking maybe I should combine what I do for a living with the beauty of actually writing, authoring a book. So that's where I sort of cracked the code to Surrounded by Idiots, because I was working with that too, the four color too, red, yellow, green, and blue, and so on. Those things, the old disc profile. That was just a tiny little piece of what I was doing, but I thought maybe I should start there and see what happens. If the business world is interested, maybe everybody else is interested. Turns out pretty much so. So, yeah.
I've read Surrounded by Idiots, so I know a little bit about the answer to this question, but because if I'm being honest, uh, maybe my expectation from the title was different than what the book was a little bit on its own, because you see the headlines like Surrounded by Idiots and Surrounded by Narcissists, Surrounded by Liars, and Surrounded by Energy Vampires. At some point, you've got to wonder, am I the problem or is everybody else the problem, right?
Maybe you've seen the meme that is, going around the globe, lap after lap after lap, with a picture. I think it's four of my books, and saying maybe has it occurred to Thomas that he might be the problem? Yeah, for sure. But And that's the best free commercial I've ever seen. Like, 50 million views. It's absolutely great. But the thing is this: we are all the idiot in somebody's story, right? Sometimes you have to look yourself in the mirror. Maybe you're the one who needs to sort of pay attention and shape up a little bit. That was the case for me when I was young. Man, I messed up too frequently. So we should always look at ourselves. But of course, surrounded by it's irony, and most people, 99.99999 of everybody, understand it. Some people don't understand it, and they say, "Are you calling people idiots? You shouldn't do that." 2025, haven't we reached any further? And I think, well, okay, can't help with that. But most people understand it's sort of a joke. It's this recognitional phrase. We all been in those meetings where we sit down around the table, and after a while you feel you're surrounded by idiots because what is wrong with these people? I'm the only one who gets it, which is kind of interesting. So that's how it started, and it's more of a marketing thing to keep the context surrounded by either or. We are not surrounded by narcissists or psychopaths, but they exist out there. There are bad people out there for sure.
What was the year that Surrounded by Idiots came out?
In Swedish, it came in 2014, so that's about 11 years ago, within a couple of weeks.
Okay, and so 3 years before that, you had your first fiction novel that was published. So, did you write Surrounded by Idiots in that 3 year window, or had you already kind of been working on it for a little while at that point?
The first notes I found last summer was from 27. And so I was sort of sketching a little bit to try to figure out if this could happen. So the idea had been there. I, though, wrote the book while commuting to different clients because I had a really bad car accident in 2013. So I didn't dare to take the car to my different assignments in Stockholm, where the traffic is really heavy, actually. So I was commuting using the train, the tram, and I wrote on the train basically for, I would say, 6 months. It didn't require much really because everything was in here. I had everything here, the stories, the anecdotes, the knowledge, the intel around, the details and the facts. So I actually used 20 minutes here and 90 minutes there and maybe an hour there, and then writing in the early morning, sitting on an airplane somewhere. So I don't know how. I think it took like 4 months to put the whole thing together. Actually, that was the easy part, writing the book. The hard part was to getting it published, because that's a different story in itself. You know what happened? I can tell you the story. It's not
Yes,
too
please.
long. I had published four thrillers, 4 books. They were doing pretty okay, as I mentioned before. Okay, not a success, nothing I could live on, but pretty okay for a beginner. So I went to my then publisher and then I said, I have this brilliant idea. I'm going to write a book about communication styles, about behavioral profiling and personalities. And they said, what are you talking about? And I said, well, it's going to be called Surrounded by Idiots. And this is the cover. You can see the cover there. There it is. It's my own design. And they looked at me with horror in their eyes and they said, what are you talking about? Firstly, it's a stupid title. It's an ugly cover. Don't do it. Who's interested in communication anyway? Nobody cares. Scrap the whole idea. So they said, don't do it. And then I started shopping around in the whole industry in Little Sweden, asking every publisher I can find online. And they all basically said the same thing. I was the idiot. So I had to self-publish the bloody book, because they all said, this isn't going to fly. Just forget about it. And even though I had to pay for the print, they said, we're going to print 3,000 copies. I said, no, let's print 10,000. No, let's go for 3, because nobody believed in it. Absolutely nobody believed in it. But I'm a bit
And
persistent.
well, and the writing itself is about the DISC model, which is dominance, influence, steadiness, and conscientiousness. Is that the C?
That's an okay translation. There are a couple of varieties of this, but that's absolutely okay.
And had you been working with that system already up to that point? Because obviously the system had been
Yes.
out before that, and you're writing about the system.
Exactly. The disc profile has been on the market since, I don't know, like early 70s or something. It goes back to the vector analysis that Clark did in the 50s, and then that, which goes back to Marston's work from 1928. So, and Jung, and you can actually track this 2 by 2 matrix back to Hippocrates, really, but he used the 4 temperaments. So it's kind of basic knowledge. So I didn't invent anything. I managed to wrap it into sort of a contemporary context, let's say, in order to make people say, aha, this is how I can use it. But I had been working on this working with this tool since mid 90s. So at least for 20 years before I wrote the book.
You must have analyzed yourself at some point, and I've heard you talk about, talk about that a little bit, about almost in a way that you've got sort of, I want to say you tap into the different characteristics, almost like changing a persona in a way. There's you sitting down at home and versus, you standing up on stage and presenting.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's the magic of it. I mean, we're speaking English right now because it's a language many people understand. If I was speaking around this table here, it would be in Swedish. If I go to Greece, I would try to speak some Greek. It's the same thing. It's a kind of another language. When you know how to do it, you know how to sort of how to use it, and the more you use it, the better you get at it. So there's nothing really magic about it. It's just a system that you can follow. It's a fundamental system. It's a basic system. It doesn't solve everything, absolutely, which I'm crystal clear about, but it gives you a hint on how people can be interpreted. And when it comes to how I am acting, I am a lucky guy in a way. I can score high on 3 out of 4 colors in the system. I have a lot of red, yellow, and blue. I have no green whatsoever. So that's a challenge for me, which means in order to meet the green audience, I need to turn this switch on. But I can do that because I know I'm lacking certain things. And everybody can do that. If I can do it, anyone can do it. So, but I use it, instinctively. It doesn't take any effort at all.
But 10 or 12 years ago, when you're putting the book together, and you've got the over ambition or the exceedingly high expectation for the book, and not 3,000 copies but 10,000 copies, but you hadn't really been working with your own system on yourself that much at that point, or had you? Because I'm wondering where you were in that system, and how you kind of were able to push the criticism from experts behind maybe concerns from other people aside, just to keep going forward with this book.
That's more than one question you're asking there. But my first encounter with the disc profile was at the age of 24. I got my first managing position at the age of 24 in a Swedish bank. I was a good sales rep, so I sold myself to them and said, take me, I can do the job. And for some silly reason, they accepted. They shouldn't have done that because I messed it up badly, severely, painfully, horribly. It was an absolute crash and burn experience, mostly for my poor team of 13 ladies who tried to do the job. And I messed it up completely. And that's a story in itself, but not to bore you completely. After I managed to sort of rid myself from this situation, if you know what I mean, the HR department in the bank called me up and said, hey, would you fancy a personality profile? And I said, absolutely, I'm a willing learner. What is it? And they handed me a questionnaire, and then they gave me a report, which was a disc profile. I figured out later. And they handed me sort of a folder, and I started to read it, and it was a horrible, horrible read. And I said to the lady, is this what people see when I present myself to them? And she said, I said, this is horrible. And she said, would you like to talk about it? And I said, I better do that. So I have been studying myself since the age of, well, at least 25, which is, as you can see, some time ago. More than half of my life has been a constant study of myself. It's an interesting topic for all of us, focusing on ourselves. And we should do that to a certain extent, for sure. But learning and trying to figure out as you go what you could do better and what you could add to your persona, what you could sort of tone down. You can't change who you are. You can't change your personality, and neither can I. But I can tone down my extrovert side sometimes, and I can push it up when I'm on stage. If I could show my introvert blue bar like an engineer and accountant in front of 3,000 people, that would not be a funny game. They would say, this is not entertaining one bit. So I had been working on myself and I knew about it very, very well. That's why I wrote the book, because I have experienced it personally and I used it on many thousands of people before I even, you know, wrote the introduction to the book. Um, your second question is about critique. All systems get criticized. I think that firstly you have to understand if you achieve success, regardless of where it is in life, you will be criticized. It's like some people have to criticize. If you're too skinny, then you're an anorectic. You eat too little, you know. If you're too big, you're a lazy boner who can't keep your diet. If you work too much, you're an alcoholic. If you work too little, you're just someone who likes to, let other people take responsibility. Doesn't really matter. If you go to the left, you should have gone to the right, and etc. But the thing is this: I can't listen to that because I see the real results, in my daily life. May I give you an example which
Yes, please.
describes this? I was in the Netherlands last autumn in October, and then we had a PR tour, and we traveled to Ghent, or is it Ghent?
Ghent,
Ghent?
yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
what it is. Depends on where you come from, what this city is called. Beautiful city, lovely people, and we did this book signing in a bookstore, big bookstore, long line outside, and was sort of going half through the block there, around the block. And first in line was a young guy, young boy, really. And I would estimate he had a pile of books in his hand, like 7 titles. He had all the books with him, and he was standing there with his parents. I would estimate his age to 12, maybe 13, maybe, which is very young to read my books. And he came up, his parents sort of pushed him in front of themselves and said, "Hey, you go up to the author and get the book signed." And I said, "Okay, hey, are you buying all the books?" "Oh, I have all the books, but now I need them signed by you." And I said, "Okay, well, so you're buying new copies?" And he said, "Yes, yes, yes." And he said, "I am so grateful for these books. They have really helped me." Because the mother would say, "Tell him why you like the book." You have to say, because the parents were standing in the background. Okay, so, okay, tell me the story. And the young guy, he said, "Well, I have been bullied all of my life, throughout kindergarten up to where I am now. Constant bullied. And then I read your book. And that absolutely described exactly why I was bullied. So I turned the whole franchise around. And now my life is so different and I feel so well. So I would like to thank you, sir." And so I took his hand and I said, "I'm so grateful for the story. Thank you for sharing." So I shook his hand, and then big tears were starting to fall on his cheeks. And I felt like I'm a bit a sensitive guy myself. So I felt like, wow, this is a beautiful moment. So, I had to hug the guy, and he started to shake because it was so emotional. So to my critiques, I would like to say, should I have told this young man, "Sorry, it's just in your mind. It never happened because it's not scientifically accurate enough"? No, I would say if you use this kind of system the right way, it can create magic. You have to do it the right way. But obviously it works. I am more interested in systems that work than systems that are exact. That's it, good enough for me.
Whether you've lived in the Netherlands for years or are getting ready to move here, the best time to learn the Dutch language is right now. Learning Dutch with the Delft method at Nedles is extremely effective because you start speaking the language from the very first day, actively putting the vocabulary you learn to good use. Nedles offers courses at all levels, both online and in person, at their location right here in Amsterdam. Their experienced teachers are specially trained in the Delft method, which combines studying a piece of text at home and then using words from the reading material in conversations during the next class. Students often say they feel supported at Nedles and praise the teachers for creating a safe space where they can overcome their fears of making mistakes. They also specialize in helping long-term immigrants, like me, tap into the passive knowledge they have about Dutch so they feel more comfortable speaking and writing in the language. Dutch classes begin at all levels on a rolling basis, so sign up today and save 10% using discount code PODCAST. Find out more at nedles.com. That's Nedles.com. Nedles, Dutch for Internationals. I think that's such a touching story, and I'm wondering, also at the same time, did you have a personal experience along those lines with yourself and your own self-reflection?
Well, what I told you about my managing position when I was really, really young, that was a similar experience because when I entered this office, firstly, I was 24, as I said before, repeating myself a little bit here, and it was 13 ladies, 13 women. This is going to be great. Oh Lord, what was I thinking? But the problem was I didn't know how to lead. I didn't know how to manage people because my self-awareness was really low. So I was cracking jokes. I was talking too much. I was joking with really stressed out people. This was in the middle of something called the bank crisis. We had a financial crisis in Sweden in the early 90s. We had this steel bath for the banks before everybody else had it. So we sort of had to shape up 10 years ahead of everybody else. So we missed the 2007 dip because we had control of things. We had taken the medications already. But whatever they came to me with, what should we do here with this client? And I said, fix it. Okay, so what about that? Well, fix it. How about this? Well, fix it, fix it. I didn't know. I'm busy managing here. You see, I see I'm the manager. I was sitting behind a closed door in a room with a glass, well, then looking out, pondering the landscape and looking and perusing every client coming, thinking if there is an important thing, they will come to me. And when they did, I didn't know the answers. So people started to get really, really frustrated. Of course, I actually went to my boss's boss, the guy who hired me, 2 levels up, and I said, you better take me out of this equation because I don't know what I'm doing. And he said, his response was word by word, he said, you better stay put, Sonny, because your boss is even worse. She's not even here. She was working on projects constantly. She wasn't even in the room. So I tried to fix her job as well, and it didn't work. And I didn't listen. I was such a poor listener. I'm not saying this because I'm proud of it. I'm saying this. It's still, you know, I would say 5 or 6 years ago, I was downtown Stockholm, and I was walking a crowded street, and I saw a profile I recognized. One of the ladies that I was the manager of, I was the team leader of. She came up from behind, walking in around a little bit quicker, and I saw it because she had a special profile. So and I instantly just turned away like this, because I couldn't face her. If she had recognized, I would have been ashamed. 20 years later, I mean, this is as bad as it gets. And then the HR department, when you sit around the table in the coffee room, the personality, the staff room there in the back, and you sit there, and someone is leaving for the next step in his career. Someone has bought a present, someone baked a cake, and good luck on your next step, and happy future for you, and we're gonna miss you. We were sitting there drinking coffee. They didn't give me anything. I gave them a plant and basically said, I'm sorry. It was so painful. It didn't work at all. And at the end of this meeting, one lady felt bad for me and she said something like, I guess it got a little bit better at the end. It was just horrible, awkward, horrible, ew. But it made me think. And then when I got the report in my hand and the HR department said, you better shape up, otherwise you're done. You're
Mhm.
done here. If you can't do better, you're out. You get one more chance and then you're out. And it was the middle of a crisis where unemployment was, shooting through the roof.
Right.
So I had to, and what I basically I had to sort of tone myself down. I had to sort of take things more seriously. I had to stop talking, stop interrupting, start listening. A lot of things actually. So it was a long moment. It took me a couple of years to recover from this. And when I got the next position in a similar position, next job in a similar position, same
Hmm.
occupation, I did so much better. And then people started to they started to appreciate my work. They started to respect me because I respected them. And but it's a constant, it's a constant, it's a constant process. Sounds like a cliche, but you can never stop working on you, I think.
Thomas, were you like that also as a child, or were you
No,
more?
no, 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 I
So
didn't.
it was really
No, I
that
didn't.
moment when you were 24 that kind of changed it a bit.
This was my. Sometimes I call this like my aha moment, but it really was my. It was rather my oh no moment. But it helped me. Sometimes pain can sort of get you going. It's not all about getting inspired or motivated, or that's not a case. I think pain can really solve problems if you listen to it, if you sort of lean into it. Uh,
Mm.
I'm still struggling doing stupid things on a weekly basis. Ask my team and they will tell you. But what I do believe is it's like, some people go to university for 5 years and they read, like 3 tons of books and they write essays and they try to do their exams and they score. And then they never open a book in their life again. I
Mm.
think that's kind of strange because if you have studied so long and learned so many things and sort of built on you and your intrinsic value and your knowledge and creating something that brings something to the marketplace, let's say, then you stop. Now, what good are you? Because the world is evolving constantly. We know this. Those people are mostly scared of AI, I would say, because they haven't implemented a constant learning process with themselves. I mean, I read a lot of nonfiction books. I read 2 books per week, one fiction, one nonfiction.
Hmm.
I'm not trying to look smart here, but I like to read. I don't watch TV. I don't listen to the news. So I save a lot of time there. So therefore, I have a lot of reading time. And for me, that is important. All books that I read teach me something. Some books are extraordinarily good, so talented. And some books are, yeah, maybe a couple of paragraphs was of interest, but it's something. Then I put them in my journal and save them for the future. And I believe that what everybody should do, looking at yourself and, are you ready for a huge cliche here, Zach?
Always.
You only live once, right? I mean, the best news is you're going to die. You're going to die regardless of what you do. You're going to be put at the ground. Some people that you consider the loved ones, they will stand around your coffin. They will say something beautiful, and then they will go home and have some food. You know, food that you probably have paid for yourself, and then they will start squabbling over your inheritance. So you basically have nothing to lose, really. We're all going there at the end of the life. It's gonna be over. Why not do the best out of it and working on you and see how far you can take it? You have nothing to lose. Do it. Just do it.
May I make the argument also that there is some very excellent television and film out there that hopefully you don't totally deprive yourself of those either.
No, I just said I prefer reading books instead.
Okay.
I watch interesting movies. I saw one with my wife last night called The Ghostwriter by
Yeah,
what's it
it's
called,
a
Robert
great
Harris.
movie.
Excellent movie
Yeah.
with Pierce Brosnan and well, other people as well.
Ewan McGregor.
Great
Yeah,
movie.
right. Yeah.
Exactly right. That's the one. He was the ghostwriter. No, I watch some movies and I look at some series on Netflix. But if I can, I don't like. I'm one of these guys. I don't like to be served everything.
Hmm.
So I can just sit there, and take it in. I want to use my own brain really because I'm afraid that if I don't use it, I'm going to lose it. So reading a book makes you think. It makes you reflect. It's a slower pace, obviously, and I like that slower tempo in the whole process. And even from a good movie, you can learn a lot of things from. You can watch, Lord of the Rings and learn a lot if you read it. Actually, because then you read the dialogue and then you see the beautiful moments. And it's for me, I'm only speaking from my own perspective, right?
Sure.
I don't know what everybody else should feel or think. I have no clue, but I like this. Yeah, I said it already. This slower pace where I can take it in. I can put the book aside and I can think for a moment. That's interesting. That's a good line. I can use it, or I can think about it. I can put it in perspective. I can use it in my own communication with my kids or something. Um, there are so many things out there to learn. And I got a question in another podcast a couple of weeks ago. They said, I'm not a young man anymore. As everybody who can looks at my face here, I'm not young. I understand that. I feel young. I feel
Hmm.
extremely young, but I don't look young, and I get it. And they said, "Aren't you going to slow down now? Aren't you retiring within 10 years?" And that phrase sort of paralyzed me. Retiring? Are you crazy? There's so much to do. It's actually quite the opposite. There are so many opportunities, you know. So I am actually gearing up. I'm getting more and more impatient as life goes by because there are so many things I would like to do, and life is so short and so precious. So
Is this a mentality that came out of growing up in, I know I'm going to butcher the name, but is it Västernorrland? Is that the name of the place where you grew up?
I am from northern parts of Sweden called Norrbotten, close to the polar circle. But
Okay.
you did your research. You're close enough. Close enough. Absolutely.
But is this kind of
Absolutely.
what comes out of growing up in an area like that where, I imagine, not a city, not an overpopulated area, it's either decide in one way, stay there for your life, or in another way, go out and kind of explore and get as much going and get as much done as you can.
That's an interesting question. I don't know. I left quite young. I was living in a city, not a big one, but like I don't know, not a big city, but there were. I am a city child. I live in the countryside now. Really, I live in the middle of the absolute nowhere, in a big old house by a lake, which is fantastic. But there's nobody here, as a balance to my constant traveling and quite intense work life. But where comes this? I don't think that is the case. It's an interesting theory, and there might be some truth to it. I haven't thought of it, so I could elaborate and say think out loud here. But I rather think it's more like the more I the more I learn about the world, the more I explore, the more I think about what is going on out there. I came from Athens yesterday, late afternoon, and just comparing Greek history to Swedish history. Good Lord, they have history way like 3,000-4,000 years back, and in Sweden that we were covered with ice by then. There were no people here, no nothing, just ice and snow, and so they had such a vast on to just bring up and learn all the ancient Greek philosophers. So magical. And the more you think about it, the more you realize, I think, this is just my theory. I can't say it's right. I can't prove anything. But the more you realize, it's like that old example. You're standing in the middle of the forest. There's a little opening there. The sun. You can see the sound through the trees there, through the pines, and the opening in there that symbolizes everything that you know, and the trees that you are observing symbolizes everything that you don't know. So you want to know more, so you chop down the trees. So now the opening is much bigger. Now you know a lot about more. Only problem is, what do you see? More trees. So you cut down those as well. The opening is bigger, and you see even more trees, and it can frustrate you completely. I'm a little bit there. It's too much to take in. I want to be everywhere. I want to do everything. I'm mostly angry with myself for not starting, well, let's say at the age of 24 instead of the age of what, 44. I should have figured this out earlier. What was I thinking the first 20 years of my professional career? I don't know. I probably didn't think at all. I'm not so smart I could solve it myself.
But you needed that 20 years to be where you are now, no?
I guess I had to take quite a few punches before sort of life got to me, and I started to think, hey, this isn't working. I better do something else because, late bloomer, call it whatever you like. But and I don't have a psychology degree to explain it thoroughly, so I don't know. I can only, from a philosophical point of view, say I've been there. I did my homework based on a lot of pain. I have. I'm not complaining, but I'm as everybody else. I'm carrying scars on the inside that actually hurt quite a lot still. But it has taught me. I have chosen deliberately. It's a conscious, let's say, decision. I have to learn from this situation. That's one thing that I tell myself every morning, every evening. This happened today. What can I learn from this? Even though it could be the worst possible experience, what is to learn from this? When the swearing and the cursing is over, what can we learn from this? And that's usually something. There's always something. Well, you could have asked more questions. You could have kept your temperament in control. You could have checked your boarding pass or whatever. It's usually me. It's usually me. Unfortunately.
The wounds and the scarring that you say you carry with you like everybody else, is that something that you feel like that you've dealt with, or are those issues that you keep? Is that something that is maybe one of the reasons why you keep moving forward to sort of have new experiences and new stories, so you don't deal with the issues and the scarring from your past?
Are you asking if I'm going to therapy? No, I'm not. No, I'm not going to therapy. No, I tried CBT, which is really good,
Mm-hmm.
but that was after a divorce 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So that's useful. CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. That's
Behavioral
actually very
therapy.
useful.
Yeah.
Very hands-on, very concrete. Not this fluffy, ooh, talk about your mother. No, nothing like that at all. Don't ask me about her. But but God bless you, mommy. But no, seriously, I dealt with it by, I'm not completely stupid when it comes to collecting my thoughts. I have a system in listening to my intrinsical, let's say, debate with myself, and I can go back and forth, and I take notes. I journal, not every day, but a couple of times per week, and I write sort of moments down, and I go back and I read them. I look at them. I have a library of notebooks which I look at a couple of times per year and see if there's something I could sort of repeat for myself. That's how I process things. I'm lucky. I'm not suffering at all. I I am very fortunate. Uh, I can do things that I love to do, and I meet people who are fantastic. And I'm talking to you now about interesting topics. You know, so it would be silly to complain even for a second, and I don't. But of course, we all suffer from some things. Again, we all have those scars. If my life is worse than yours, well, maybe, I don't know. That's not the point. I can't do anything about your suffering. I can do anything about something about my own suffering. And I am actually responsible for myself. It's not like I could say, because you had it worse, I don't have to do anything, or because I have it worse, you have to help me. No, I have to take care of my own, my own, where I am in the universe right now, I guess, my own.
Your own position and well-being. Yeah.
Yes, do the best I can. I like this notion about, and I'm not the only one, taking responsibility. I don't like complaints. I don't like this nagging, and pointing fingers, victimizing yourself, saying, "Oh, because this happened, poor me," and blaming the government and the taxes and the weather and the neighbors and your stupid family, and your skeptical parent or whatever it is. Doesn't matter. They won't do anything about it. No one's coming to save me. I have to save myself. Actually, it sounds a bit, I don't know what it sounds like, but I think it's true. If I stay as strong as possible and I work on me, I can have so much more to give to my family. My wife needs me, absolutely, but if I don't take care of myself, I can't take care of her either. If she can't take care of herself, she can't help me either. That's just the way it is. I can't be there for my kids if I allow the world to just fall bam onto my head and just crash beneath the rubble. No, I can't do that. Doesn't matter how hard it is. It doesn't matter if the plane is late and I can sleep for 2 hours. I still have to get the job done. I have to be a role model for my family, basically mainly for my family, hopefully for other people as well. And I'm taking this quite seriously. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Who were your role models when you were a kid, when you were growing up then?
I had thought of that, and I'm not sure I can answer it properly because, again, I didn't think in those terms when I was young. Certainly not when I was a kid. I was just, playing along, trying to, get the day going. So I really can't say. I have been thinking a lot about this. I would like to say my father, in some ways, he was very conscientious, very very kind, extremely helpful, always there, but very low key, very conflict avert at the same time, which I don't want to be. I'm not very assertive. Actually, I try to look friendly if I can, but don't provoke me too much. And you will probably get some truth. But I think my role models came later in life. I would like to say I had a couple of managers, really, really good people. I had a bank manager who really taught me fantastic things. But I was in my mid 30s when it happened, actually.
Mhm.
I built a family as a really young man. I was 24 when the first kid came. Also, so a lot of things happening. I was moving 1,000 kilometers to the south to Stockholm from up north. It's like moving to the moon, basically, compared to being here. So a lot of changes there, and I could blame that a little bit for messing up at work, but it wouldn't really be the case because I could have done better anyway. So I probably blamed it a little bit. Yeah, I feel like lost in the big city here, but that's no good reason, really. It's just something to make me feel better about me. But my role models are basically historical people. I had some inspirators like the American business philosopher Jim Rohn, for instance. Excuse me. He has taught me a lot, but he was dead when I discovered him. So I've watched the videos online with him from when he was younger, like in his 40s, probably up until, I don't know, 80s or whatever. A lot of his philosophies are extremely valuable for someone like me. By reading books, I find a lot of strength. I had a manager, my latest manager in the bank. He said, "Never leave your house dressed in something you would not like to see yourself in the newspaper next morning.
Yeah.
If you don't want your photograph to be taken and published in the biggest tabloid and on the front page, don't leave the building." That's something that I live by. So I'm wearing a shirt 7 days per week, even when I'm mowing my lawn. Not a white shirt for a suit, but still some sort of shirt. And people laugh at me and say, "Why don't you wear a t-shirt?" I don't like that. That doesn't make me feel good. Again, just a personal perception, has nothing to do with anybody else. But that's my take. But that's such a great advice that I use. I
Mhm.
don't never have to be ashamed, and my wife doesn't have to dress me. Some women have to sort of dress their husbands. I know that. She says it's so fantastic. I never have to worry how you will show up when we meet downtown for a dinner. I know it's going to be okay.
Right.
That's something that inspires me. Sort of a role model advice, let's call it.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm digressing a little bit, but still, I think so. There's so many things to find in books, on YouTube videos, if you like. Sure.
Americans, you still have one last chance to collect the extra $1,400 the U.S. government owes you from round 3 of the stimulus package if you're behind on your taxes. The experts at My Expat Taxes can guide you through the process just like they helped me. If you haven't filed taxes in the U.S. in a while or ever, My Expat Taxes will quickly and easily bring you up to date with the IRS. That way, you can still collect that stimulus check, but only if you sign up and file by June 16th. Even after living abroad for 17 years, American tax bureaucracy used to feel like a Kafka-esque nightmare for me, but not anymore. My Expat Taxes gives me a real sense of relief with their easy-to-use, up-to-date software, maximizing tax benefits like the foreign earned income exclusion, and they even filed my bank account reporting at no extra charge. They are secure and reliable with a commitment to data privacy and confidentiality. So whether you're catching up or simply filing your return on time, let the experts at My Expat Taxes wipe away your tax anxiety. Use discount code DAMNYANKEE and get 10% off your purchase. That's DAMYANKEE, Damn Yankee. At myexpattaxes.com, your life just got a whole lot easier. I find it really interesting that you describe yourself as an expert on human behavior. And at the same time, it sounds like you're a lot more interested in philosophy than psychiatry, for example.
Psychiatry is about medicine. Psychology is about the human mind, I would say. But philosophy is also, people say, yeah, it's about the human heart. But I don't think that's true. Everything comes from the brain, basically. And we know this. I'm also very interested in neuroscience.
Mm-hmm.
I know a number of neuroscientists. I usually ask them, so what about the brain research here? What do we know? And they say, well, a lot. So what's missing? We don't know. How much do you have? We don't know. How much is missing? We can't tell you, and that fascinates me a little bit. Just just the fact that the human brain is plastic is sort of a new encounter, new sort of insights. But I'm interested in a lot of things. I'm interested in everything that forms a person's behavior. And it's not just psychology. If you ask people within the STEM fields, they would just laugh and say, psychology, are you stupid? That's not even a real science. Do this study and repeat it over and over and over and get the same result. And then you can come back and we can have a conversation. And I say, I think that's a bit narrow-minded because, we know a lot. Yeah, but it's not like physics, forget about scrap the whole thing. Humans, no, that's not exact. And maybe it isn't. But still, it's fascinating. And that's probably something with my getting a little bit older. I think this, this, what, well, this philosophical uh, take on things, the more I that's another thing that you learn, and I'm certainly not the only one. When you are young, you know everything for certain. That's the way it is. This is how it is. When I was 19, I sat at this bank cashier desk, next to me, another guy, he was 18, and we were discussing and laughing about top management like 9 floors up. Why don't they understand? It's so simple. If they only did this and only did that. And we made a career, and he ended up as the director of this very place. And these days we laugh at how silly we were, how stupid. What were we thinking? And it's so stupid because you are so self-assured when you're young, and it's a great feeling, but it's also stupidity. But the older I get, the more I realize that we are affected by so much more than you can find in an Excel sheet or in a book or in economics or psychology or whatever it is. This philosophical thing, like talking about. I met an Orthodox priest when I was in Athens 2 days ago, and we shook hands, and he didn't speak very well in English, and he put me on the phone with a Swedish monk in a monastery up somewhere in the mountains in northern Greece. We spoke for a couple of minutes, and it's really interesting. And I said, do you have a smartphone? What a stupid question. And he laughed and said, of course I have a smartphone, but aren't you a monk? Yeah, I don't have to suffer 24/7, he said. I can still be in contact with the world, so not just it sounds silly when I say it, cut that out. Seriously. No, but to be frank here, there are so many things that you can't explain that still has a value to how you form your life. If you look your wife or your husband in their faces and you see something, you see they're frowning, and you ask them, how are you? I'm fine. And you see they're not fine, but still they claim, I'm fine, I'm good, nothing to worry about. And you see something is going on, just to figure it out. What book should you read to listen? Could you just ask another type of question? Okay, if you weren't fine, then what would you tell me? If you had the trust in me not making a fool out of you or laugh at you, then what would you describe about what's happening within you today? These things you can't psychologically, or you can't really in a scientific way describe what is going on all the time, but you can sort of use your senses. You can use, if you have a sixth sense or some sort of intuition, try to you know try to dare, I think the word is dare to listen to your gut feeling more often. And there are studies that says it's more correct than you might imagine, which is also interesting. How to prove it, I don't know. But I think that's important, to be a little bit open to what's happening around you. You don't have to go into, trying mushrooms and, sit in the woods naked under a tree. You don't have to do those things. No, you can do it, I guess, but you're just being a little bit more open, a little bit more observant to the happenings around you.
Is this the sort of premise of why you're going forward with the Surrounded by series in the way that you are? Is the idea of getting people to ask alternative questions about themselves and about the situations that they're in?
Absolutely. The quality of how you feel, the quality of your performance, the quality of your relationships, the quality of your results, the quality of your life, your your presence here on earth is largely dependent on how good you are at asking questions, I would say, asking the right questions. And it's not that complicated. Asking open-ended questions is really good. And if you can ask them to yourself, if you say like, okay, it's Tuesday lunch, and they asked me, I was in Greece, would you care for a glass of wine to lunch? And you shouldn't drink wine at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Don't do that. That's not a good choice. But you took a glass of wine. You say, yeah, that's an innocent thing. I just blended in because they was drinking wine. No, not really. If you ask yourself, how come I said yes, even though I know it's the wrong move? This is just a tiny, tiny example. Okay. I drink wine from occasionally, so I'm nothing, no problem with alcohol. That's not the point. But there are occasions when you shouldn't. If you like to crack a joke because you're nervous at a funeral, intellectually, no, you shouldn't do that. Then you have to ask yourself, from where comes this idea that I would like to be funny here because you are nervous? How about just lean in and let the tears flow and be nervous or be sad or feel horrible? It's going to teach you something. If you want to have wine and you said no, but you should have said, you said yes, but you should have said no. What made you say yes? If you had said no, what would have happened? Would they sort of say, okay, now you leave the room. No food for you. Really? Do you think so? Or should you sort of stand your ground and say, hey, I don't drink wine on Tuesdays? That's my rule. It's just a rule. You can pick any rule you want. I'm not judging anyone. Seriously, I'm not. But I don't drink wine Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. No, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. On weekends, I drink wine, but not before 5 o'clock. Not because I can't or because you have to have some sort of rule. And that's my rule.
Sure.
It's a simple rule. You don't have to like it. You can have another rule. But it's like in Sweden, there's a saying, maybe that you have it too, but they say, well, principle, they are meant to be broken. No, they're not. That's a stupid thing. That's just an explanation for why you can't stick to what you know is correct. Principles are meant to be kept, firmly. If you stand by your point in this or that or whatever it is, never back away. If you have decided once, that's what I do these days. If I have made up my mind on anything, I won't leave it. I will listen to your arguments and I will send them back to you. I'm mentoring people and coaching people, so I know how to send them back in a way that make you think, because that's what I do in my profession. But
Thomas, I just want to take a step back because you mentioned about being nervous and cracking jokes at a funeral, for example, but also, being at the table and not lifting your head away from your phone on Instagram. And, there must be something else going on there. In your opinion, do you feel like we are too open and too willing to distract ourselves from what's going on around us?
yes, absolutely, 100%. And I think we are going 100 miles per hour in the absolute wrong direction. We are constantly looking for dopamine kicks, and even grown-ups is standing at airports, in line by traffic lights with their stroller with the kid and watching their phone, and crossing the street while watching their phone. That is not good behavior. I am struggling with this myself because I know how the neurons in my brain is getting affected. It's not good for anyone. I'm not saying you shouldn't inform yourself and keep track of things. If you have a profile on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, fine, sure, use it. But we know it's a bad thing. I gave this talk a couple of weeks ago on a book fair somewhere in Europe, and a couple of hundreds of people. And they had a mic in a sort of a little soft box they could throw it around. And one question that came from the audience was, one lady said, the homes are getting silent and it's worrisome. Parents are getting quite stressed because the silence is sort of sinking itself onto the homes because everyone in the family is stuck by their phone or by their laptop. No one can anymore just watch a movie and discuss the narrative in the story because everyone has their phone in their hands simultaneously. The teenagers are playing some video game on the phone and watching a movie, because watching a movie, it's not enough. They have to have this, and it's about dopamine, which is highly, highly, highly addictive.
What can we do about it?
I think it's the same thing as if they had invented alcohol today, it would have been illegal. I think it's the same thing. But I think the effect on our brains, especially young brains, is worse than making them drink alcohol, because it really tripwires. It really
rewires
cuts
everything, right?
the circuits in the brain, the synapses in the brain. Undeveloped brain. That's until the frontal lobe closes, which is at least to the early 20s. You are not a fixed personality. You're not a ready-made person until you are a grown-up. But that's when you are, well, 20. And some people never grow up. And the more you affect the brain in a let's say, what's the word, when non-real way, because digital technology, it's not real, it's not about biology, but it affects our biology. I think it's bad. I'm not advocating throw them in the river, because that's never going to happen. Equally, alcohol will never be banned. Cigarettes will never be illegal. But if they have invented nicotine, or the tart now, it would be illegal because it hurts us too much. But now the phones are here. Now the social media is here. They even let the artificial intelligence loose without checking it what it's supposed to be doing.
Mhm.
Sam Altman at OpenAI says, not even we exactly know where this will end, because we really don't know what we're doing, but they just let it out there and people have fun with it. And I've tried it a bit too. But I don't think it's the end of the world. I don't think it's the end of humanity or anything like that. I'm not a conspiratory guy at all, but I think we have a problem. There's an American psychologist called Jonathan Haidt. He wrote a book called The Anxious Generation, and he blames social media and smartphones for it. He blames a lot of problems in the youth in the Western world today, or the industrialized world, because it's the same in South Korea and Japan. It's the same, exactly the same pattern.
Right.
And he says this has got to stop. And some people in some nations, they have tried to ban smartphones at schools, doing
Yes,
pretty
here
okay.
also.
Kids,
Yep.
of course, the kids are trying to get around, so they have two smartphones. And the parents says, yeah, but I have to be able to call him. Well, get him a flip phone. They're good for making calls, right? He doesn't have to have access to all the horrible stuff online. Some is good. Too much of it is horrible, horrible, horrible. I mean, we know what it is. So I don't know what to do. If I knew, I would like to. I think I actually think I I I I I appreciate the question, because we've been talking about this, me and my wife. We are, in a way, I guess, let's say, traditionalists in a fundamental value perspective. We believe in the family. We believe in, open doors for ladies, old ladies. We believe in helping each other out. We believe in, if someone falls, you should reach out a hand and say, hey, are you okay? Can I do something? Should I call a taxi for you? We believe in those small, tiny actions that everybody can do. We believe in calling your mother-in-law and greeting her and saying, how are you? Do you need any help? We believe in those kind of things. We believe in having conversations around the dinner table. How was your day? Tell me, what was the best with your day? What was the most
Mhm.
fantastic thing with your day? We believe in not shying away from problematic conversations. We believe in discipline. We believe in responsibility. These things, which are actually quite a lot, I would say, Christian values from the Christianity, or Christendom as it was called, actually, to begin with.
Mhm.
Uh, I think what's in the Bible is a lot of interesting stuff. I'm not a believer myself. I don't believe in the Lord. So, and I'm not talking about the church, because
Mhm.
humans have corrupted every every institution on the planet and will continue to do so. So that's not the point. But some things are very valuable. I read the New Testament from time to time as a self-help book. That's a lot about self-development if you read it the right way. And there are some horrible, stupid old stuff that you don't have to read, so obviously. But it can be a source of inspiration. And I think the more we stray away from these traditional values, which actually built the Western society, and let's call it Europe then, because it stems from Europe. The United States comes from Europe, let's say. Australia are occupied by Europeans. Some people who listen to this will say, what an idiot. And that's fine. This is just my personal view. I'm not saying I'm right or wrong. I'm just saying this is how I come to view it. But I think when we sort of, Nietzsche wrote in the 1860s, The Death of God. And I think he
Mhm.
was right when he predicted we will just soar into hedonism and stupidity. And finally, it might be the end of it, because we don't know how to stop dealing with short-time pleasure instead of long-term, prosperity.
Is maybe Surrounded by Tech Bros going to be your next book at that point?
Yes, narcissists, psychopaths, and tech pros. Yeah, they don't care about humanity. They care about money, and they want to take it as far as they can. But every tool on the planet that we have invented, someone has turned it into a weapon. Every single thing, and it's evil in humans. We're not born good. We have to teach ourselves to be good, train ourselves to be good. I think we are born like animals. We are like wild beasts, really. We have to domesticize our kids so they don't do the horrible stuff. That's why family is important. Yes, it's a traditional thing. No, it's not easy. And yes, it's painful. And no, everybody cannot do it without some help. But, it takes a village. That was true before. It takes a village to raise a child. Now it's impossible to tell the neighbor's boy to don't run your bicycle over my newly, laid lawn here. Go away. Are you harassing my son? Who are you?
Right.
Why? I gave him a good piece of advice. Shape up, buddy. You shouldn't do that.
How much do you go into new ideas and new topics in your lectures, and how much of them are more based on theories and ideas that you present in your books over the last 10 years?
I add new things every time. I value myself enough to add new pieces every time I get up on stage. No, I don't do a Jordan Peterson thing by saying, I'm going to go out there and solve the problem. We'll see what happens. No, I am very well prepared. A lot of things are the base, the fundamentals are sort of the fundament is the same, but then I add things on top of things, and I will use another thing in Amsterdam this week. That I'm going to experiment with the Dutch audience actually a little bit. Let's see if they pick it up. But I think that's a way to challenge myself a little bit.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I haven't decided. I'm going to talk about the difference between introversion and extroversion. I'm going to give a couple of examples because I Googled those things recently and found something really, really fascinating, actually.
Oh, come on. You can't leave me. You can't leave me hanging like that. You can't leave me hanging like that.
When you Google, it doesn't work in Swedish because the language is too small. But I Google I start to Google introversion. Well, the search engines, their algorithms, they are absolutely fantastic these days. They are so advanced. You type one word, two, then you get a snippet. This is what you're looking for based on what everybody else is Googling, which means it's probably that one. I just scroll it, take this one. Because it's so hard to type, like 10 letters. Oh, the effort. So which means that everybody's basically Googling the same thing, which I think is just stupid. But anyways, so when you put on why are introverts, you're going to get a lot of horrible things about introverts. That's the list because Google based it on everybody else's Googlings. Is that a word?
It is now.
So it is now. It is now. Googlings. I don't know what it's called, but so when you Google introverts, one of the sentences that comes up is why are introverts so mean? That's interesting. And the answer comes when you Google extroverts. It's another list. Why are extroverts so mean to introverts? Which is kind of interesting, actually. So then you see, step by step how these things are interconnected, but it's quite the opposite. When introverts Google extroverts and vice versa, you're going to see what they really think. Why are introverts so quiet? Who asks those kinds of questions? No one asks, why are you so loud? Well, some do, and, probably an introvert, and on it goes. And this is interesting. So I tested this, and I'm going to see how they react on it, if they recognize it. Will it work in Dutch? I don't know, but English is a big language. The lecture is in English, so yeah.
Yes.
We'll see. That's just one tiny bit, 30 seconds. So I try to add new things, see if it's interesting. And sometimes it doesn't fly at all, then I take it out. So yeah, but yeah.
So I'm also curious because you've got a book out called Surrounded by Narcissists is one of them, which we talked about a little bit. Do you think that we use words like narcissist and narcissism too much now, or gaslighting, things like that, or where we start to walk away from the meaning of them?
It's an inflationary thing. People use it without knowing what it means. But there is a narcissistic pandemic going on. You can see it online, you can see it in media, you can see it in Hollywood. I would say in Hollywood, every second person is probably a full-blown narcissist. Look at me, listen to me. Now I'm here. My words are so much more worth than yours. So shut up and listen to me instead. Actors talking about politics. What do they know? They know absolutely nothing. Obviously, some of them say so stupid things. Actually, left, right doesn't really matter. What do they know? Why are we listening to actors about politics or wars or history? They don't know. Listen to an expert instead. But it's a narcissistic thing to put yourself in the center. Social media, especially social media, is a perfect playground for narcissists, and we know this. People use it as they use that bloody psychopath, they throw it around. And there are psychopaths, 2, 3, maybe 4%, depending on which guy you want to listen to. Too many of them. We're not surrounded, but people are being called psychopaths, narcissists, hysterical, passive aggressive, because that's how I look at it. But there are technical definitions of these things that you should sort of be aware about. It's like people saying Trump is a fascist. Yeah, of course. What's new under the sun? Of course, he's a fascist, because every Republican president since the early 70s has been called a fascist. So the word has completely lost its meaning. Maybe he's a Nazi. Well, Elon Musk is a Nazi. Everybody's a Nazi these days, right? So if you don't agree with me, you're either I don't know, a Nazi or a fascist or a complete psychopath. That's a bit of a shame because, as you pointed out, the meaning of the real word is getting lost because there are Nazis. When you run into real Nazis, now you're going to see the difference. When you run into a real psychopath or narcissist, now you figure it out. Aha, so that's what it actually is. If you think just an unpleasant neighbor who doesn't listen to your political arguments, if you think he's a narcissistic fascist, and now you meet a real fascist, a Mussolini kind of guy, oh, how are you going to see the difference? That's a whole nother story. But we have misused and overused and completely killed these horrible labels on people. So yes, and again, I'm not a psychologist, but I have written about psychopathy, about manipulation, about narcissism. I've written about energy vampires, passive aggressive people, histrionic types, drama queens, and so on. And I know there are definitions. So also it's like with the introvert extrovert example. If you label people you don't understand too quickly without actually understand them fully, you're going to mess it up. Now you're the fool, really. Now you have made a fool out of yourself. And they will call you an idiot. And that's sad because you are probably not an idiot. You're just slightly ignorant of some facts. But read a book. Find out.
Well, and so in that vein, with your whole series of books that are out now, where would somebody, where's the best place for somebody new to you as an author what's the best place for them to get their start? Is it surrounded by idiots and work their way through, or has our society developed and changed over the last 11 years that they should start with one of your other books instead?
It's a good place to start. Surrounded by idiots. Omringd av idioten. That's a good place to start. That's about the 4 colors. The rest of the books have specific topics, but I have the colors in there as a sort of an element to sort of frame things. You can use your own profile in order to see how should I take in these new insights. How should I react to manipulative behavior, or a bad boss, or a lazy employee, or whatever it is, dealing with setbacks. How do I build success as a yellow and red person, for example? But you can start with the idiot book, but don't stop there because that's basics, really. It's interesting and I like it. It's a good book, I think. And millions of people agree with me. As you said, we're closing into 70 languages, which is just surreal, completely surreal. I can't imagine. It's hard to wrap your head around it. I'm grateful, but it's a little bit weird. But I would start there. My favorite is actually surrounded by setbacks. Omring door tegenslag. That's my favorite. That's very
Why?
personal. It's very personal. It is about not how to deal with setbacks mainly, but it is that too. But it is about how to create success in life. Actually, that's my only self-help book, if there ever is a thing like self-help books. If you read it in a book, is that self-help? Isn't that help? I don't know. Personal development, call it whatever. I like that a lot. I launched it in April 2020. Yeah, April, spring 2020 in
Yes.
Sweden. And then people said, you know what happened in spring 2020?
Right.
And then people said, well, sir, either you are a genius or you might be an idiot. The jury's out. That's actually the least successful book in all the books. Nobody wants to read about setbacks. But as the idiots, it's not about, it's the other way around, how to build success. That's what it is. So that's my favorite. I like it a lot.
And I think this is going to be probably my last question is, for myself, I did one of the disc analysis profiles, and I came up as about half red, about a third yellow, and about a fifth green or so. And I guess, when you read some of, the attributes or some of the traits that are around that, some of them, resonate and some of them don't. Some of them ring true and some of them don't. And then some of them ring a little too true. And, with the reaction of, I don't really know if I want that to be me, but that is me, at the moment. Um, it- so I guess what I'm wondering is, how much of how seriously should one take assessment profiles in this way, and how can they then set off on a course where they're actually working on themselves to maybe be a little bit more of the person who they want to be.
What you should do is you should take into account it's a self-assessment tool to begin with. So you might have been lying to put yourself in a better light. Because you want to read about how you are when you are on your best behavior. And if you have mostly read, let's say that you are mainly read, and I would not talk against that. I would say sure. And then you read, you're impatient, and some people perceives you slightly aggressive sometimes when you don't get your ideas through. And you say, maybe I'm not so red because I'm not that guy. Well, or maybe you should ask for feedback from other people. Hey, so this is what it says about me. Would you assess me like the following? And when people laugh and smile and say, that is you. Absolutely, Zach. I'm so sorry. That's you for sure. That is probably true. If 9 people out of 10 say, no, I actually don't recognize this part in you, so maybe that's wrong. Take a pen and then you just overscore it. That's fine. I have never seen a report, and I've given a lot of feedback sessions, thousands and thousands, to people the last 25 years, and I haven't met anyone who wouldn't like to take something out of it. It's not, again, it's not an exact tool. No, none of these tools are exact. DISC or MBTI or Big Five or whatever. They can learn, they don't give you all the answers, but they can give you the right questions. If this is true, where would it show, so to speak? If I am a bit impatient, would people agree with this? Would they say, no, you're the most patient person on the planet? But if you follow the instructions when you fill in the questionnaire, I have it on my website, surroundedbyidiots.com. You can take it there if you like. It's not free because there are free ones out there. There's a reason why they're free. I just want to say that. So they're no good because the algorithm is actually seriously complicated. But anyways, but you do it and you follow the instructions. You do it spontaneously. You don't get interrupted. You have your phone in another room. Everything, all the sounds is turned off, and you do it just run through the questions. 20 questions, 24 questions, and then you get the report, and then you just read it, and then you put it away, and then you read it the next day. But then you have sort of digested things a little bit. What made you furious the first reading will actually make you think the second and the third one. Say, there is some truth to this, because they are relatively precise actually. Let's say you would agree with, if you're red and yellow, you will agree with like 90% of what's in there. 10%, cut it out. Absolutely fine.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
Well, so it's surroundedbyidiots.com is to find out more about you. And is that also where people can go to find out where you're touring and where you're presenting?
Absolutely. I would recommend to sign up for my newsletter starting this week. Actually, the first email is going out, I would guess Wednesday this week, which would be the 14th of May, let's say.
Yeah, that'll
And
be the day before this podcast actually airs, but yes.
okay, all right. Well, the 14th of May, it was launched. Anyway, so that was it. So and no fluff, just straightforward ideas from Thomas's desk. No commercials or anything like that. Just spreading the word, so to speak. It's a good thing for me because I'm lousy at social media because of what we just talked about. I'm really bad at that, but I can reach out to people who want to listen, and that's the newsletter. So it's so do that. I would recommend it. Costs you nothing. You can unsubscribe any second.
All right. Thomas Erikson, thank you very much for all the time that you've given us. It's great. Really appreciate it. And I wish you lots of success with all of your speaking engagements coming up.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Damn Yankee is produced in partnership with NL Times, the top choice for English language news from the Netherlands. Founded nearly 15 years ago, NL Times grew to become the #1 site for information about this country, featuring more news stories every day of the week than any other website. Keep tabs on the latest top stories and breaking news from across the entire country, not only in Amsterdam, Rotterdam, and The Hague. Find out more at nltimes.nl. Damn Yankee is an NL Times podcast. The show was created by me and Peach Rizzo. This episode was produced by Peach Rizzo and was edited by Marcus Engel.